Hi, everyone. I am so delighted to be at least sending you this video. I would love to be there with you in person again one day, but for now, we'll do it virtually. I am Dr. Kamil Uordrop Alleyn, and in 2019, I got the wonderful opportunity to be in Toshkent and to do some speaking events with the US Embassy there. And it was such a delight to meet so many amazing Uzbek people, young women, young girls who were excited about science and space. And so I am excited again to hopefully get the opportunity soon to come back and be with you. So today what I'm gonna do, okay, so a little bit about myself, sorry. So I am a 26-year veteran at NASA as a rocket scientist and space scientist, and now a senior leader here at NASA. And I have had an amazing career being able to design and develop different rockets and spacecraft, and be a major part of human spaceflight programs that we have engaged in, this starting with the space shuttle, that was my first job as a flight systems test engineer on the space shuttle, testing all the systems in the payload systems of the space shuttle. I've had the amazing opportunity to be the lead systems engineer for the Orion spacecraft, which actually is getting ready to do its first full up test as part of our Artemis 1 mission, which is our mission to the moon, sending the first woman and first person of color to the moon by the year 2025. So I've been a part of that. And I've also served as an associate program scientist for the International Space Station, which we have astronauts living and working on the space station, an international crew for 6 months at a time. And they are there to do science experiments in space, or in what we call a microgravity environment. So I have had the amazing opportunity to manage across all of the science and research we do in space. And now I am at the forefront of commercializing space, meaning partnering with companies like a SpaceX or like a Blue Origin to develop future space stations that we will send our astronauts to when the International Space Station goes away. And so I'm leading that effort. So I've had an amazing, amazing career in space exploration. And so I'm excited to share some of how I got here, how I really navigated my career as a woman. And I think the audience here, are young women, maybe teenagers, high school or early college. And so I can share with you what it took for me to navigate high school, college, to get to where I am. So let's get started. So the first question is from Afroza. And she asked, what motivated me to study science? So for me, I grew up in a small country called Trinidad and Tobago. I want you to look it up on the map. It's in the Caribbean. And as a young girl growing up in Trinidad, I was always very curious about space. but curious about anything. I mean, I was just a curious kid, curious about the world around me, but a lot about space. So I remember at the age of 6 or 7 years old, I would every night go out and sit on my dad's car and just be fascinated by the night sky and just stargaze, not even knowing what that was, like the blackness of the night sky. I was just like, wow, what's out there? I had no idea. But I was a really good student in math and science. So you asked what motivated me to study science. It was because I realized that I had a real affinity for math, really more than science, but I really did well in school. And I went to an all-girl high school. And the beauty of that was it allowed me to study science, which often, teachers would say is for boys, right? And so being in an all-girls school, they couldn't say it was for boys because we had no boys. And so because I wanted to study science and I love science and I love math and calculus and trigonometry, I got the opportunity to do that, to do what I was really good at. And it really set me, it was the foundation for me being able to, pick engineering as a career. And so because I was good in math and science, I was looking at the time in high school at the different careers that needed math and science, right? That needed math and science as a foundation. And one of those things was engineering. Of course, you could do medicine, but I didn't want to be a doctor. I did not like biology. I don't like the sight of blood at all. But engineering, even though I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew you needed math and science. And so you may know that there are a lot of different types of engineering, and that's what I was faced with. I was like, okay, what type of engineering am I going to study? And so I could have done chemical engineering because I loved chemistry. I could have done petroleum engineering because there was a lot of oil. There's a lot of oil in Trinidad. There's electrical engineering and civil engineering, people who build roads and buildings and stuff. But I decided to study aeronautical engineering because I had a love for airplanes and I wanted to learn how to design airplanes. So I'm studying math and science in high school. I do really well in those subjects, and I decide I want to study aeronautical engineering. And so when I left Trinidad to move to the United States to go to college, I started studying aeronautical engineering, which is different from aerospace engineering. And in my first year of college, something happened, and I want you to look this up. In 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up upon launch and tragically killed the 7 crew members, the 7 astronauts that were on board. And for me, in that moment, it changed my life because I didn't even know. I had just left this small place, this small country, and came to the United States. And I didn't know what a space shuttle was at the time. I didn't know there was a place called NASA at the time. And I didn't know there was a job of being an astronaut, like you can fly in space. I didn't know that until those moments. And I was hooked. I was like, I don't want to learn to study airplanes. I want to learn to study, design rockets and spacecraft. And it really was then that I decided that I was going to be an aerospace engineer. And so, that's what I majored in college, mechanical and aerospace engineering. And 6 years after I got my bachelor's degree and my first master's degree in engineering, and I was offered the job at NASA, and that was 26 years ago. So that's what motivated me to study, really not science, but really to study engineering. So Frusha also asks, what advice can you give girls and young women today who want to study science and STEM fields? I would say go for it. Do not be afraid as a girl to study science or STEM fields if that is what you love, right? Do what you love, regardless to if you don't see other people who look like you doing that, right? And so I know for girls, because there are not a lot of females in STEM and there are not a lot of females in science fields, it's often really hard for you to think that you can be successful in these fields because you don't see a lot of people who look like you. And I would say, don't worry about that. Focus on what you love and do that. And if that is science, if that is math, if that is biology, if that is chemistry, if that's physics, then do that. What would also make it easier is to get a mentor, and especially like a female mentor who is a professional in that field. So for example, if you love biology and you want to do biomedical engineering, for example, identify a female who is a biomedical engineer who's already been working in that field and reach out to them and ask them to be your mentor, because mentors are really, really important. They will help you navigate the really difficult, and these are difficult fields, right? So they'll help you to navigate these fields. And they also serve as role models. And so you would say to yourself, if she could do it, I could do it too, right? So that's really important. So that's the advice I will give you. One, follow your passion. And if it's science and STEM and space, follow that. And two, find a mentor. Really important. Okay, the third question. This is from Pavina. She asks, can any girl become an astronaut? Who does she need to succeed? What does she need to succeed to be an astronaut? And will NASA cooperate with Uzbekistan? So the first question, can any girl become an astronaut? I think you mean, I am not sure what you mean, but I'll cover it from a couple different areas. Can any girl become an astronaut? Absolutely. We have female astronauts. We don't have a lot of them, but we have quite a few who have done some amazing things in space. But they happen to be from the US or from Europe. The astronauts have the people who have flown in space, women or men, have all come from countries primarily that have partners in the International Space Station. So that's the US, that's Europe, that's Canada, that's Japan, and that's Russia. Even though we've had what we call space flight participants or space tourists who are they're not necessarily part of those country agencies, space agencies, but they buy a ticket to go to space. And so we've had those kind of people from other parts of the world. Anusha Ansari, for example, was a space tourist, and she was born in Iran. So she's like the first Iranian American astronaut. And so there are girls from other countries who could be astronauts. And especially now when, we're talking about commercial astronauts, not necessarily government astronauts. We're talking about people who can buy a ticket on, the Blue Origin New Shepard rocket, or the SpaceX Dragon rocket, right? Or the Virgin Galactic space vehicle. Now space is kind of opening up more to not just government employees. I hope that made sense. what do you need to succeed to be an astronaut? Well, traditionally, if you were wanting to be a US NASA astronaut, you would have to be a scientist or an engineer or pilot in the military. Traditionally, that's what the requirement is. But as I said, now we have commercial astronauts, and you don't have to be any of those things. You can be a business person. You could be, I mean, it doesn't even matter. You could be anything now that space is opening up. Will NASA cooperate with Uzbekistan? I think it depends on it depends on the Uzbekistan government and their interest in space exploration. NASA cooperates with a lot of different countries around the world, not just those that I mentioned. We have, we have partnerships with countries in Africa and other countries in Asia. So it depends on, the goals of the country. So it will be the goal of Uzbekistan in space and the goal of NASA to partner with Uzbekistan. Okay, the next question from Maftuna, and she says, do religion, age, race, and nationality matter if you want to get a job at NASA? And the answer is no, it does not matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is we have all types of people working here at NASA. We have people from all different religions. We have people from all different ages, from young, I mean, we bring in interns that are in college all the way to really old, older folks who have spent 30 or 40 years of their career working at NASA. So we have that gamut. We have all ethnicities, as you can see. I am a woman of color, and there are quite a few of us, not many, but there are a few of us working here. And in terms of nationality, you have to be a US citizen to work at NASA, particularly. And so even though I was born in another country, I am a naturalized US citizen. So I got the opportunity, to be considered for a position, employment here. And so the other thing that's really important to know is that we value diversity. We value the fact that we have a lot of different, with all of these different religions and ages and races and nationalities, comes perspectives, different viewpoints on solving problems. And it's really important to us. The only reason I believe we are successful now moving forward is because we include a lot of these diversity of perspectives and experiences and backgrounds. And that unique perspective that each person brings is really important to solving very hard problems. And so I would say that's something we really value at NASA. And so those are the three questions, multiple questions that I had about, being in space as a woman and being at NASA. Now, there are some more technical questions, and I'm not an astrophysicist, so I'm going to stay away from some of those, like Savinch asks, if the atmosphere of Venus is covered with gas, is it possible to bring that gas to Earth? I do not know. I know it's not possible to bring that gas to Earth, but I don't know what the gas is that is predominant in Venus. So I'm not going to answer that question. I would answer this question, though. It says, are we alone? And this is from Mohinor. And he says, are we alone in the universe? What do you say to that? Even if scientists know this, maybe people are not ready for it. And so this is what I would say to that. And I get that question a lot. Actually, we get that question a lot. Are we alone in the universe? The answer is we don't know yet, but I doubt we are, because do you know how vast the universe is? It is so vast. There, we Earth is one planet in our solar system, and our star is what we call the sun, right? So when you look at stars, they're a lot like our sun. And in our and then we are part of the Milky Way galaxy, and there are billions of galaxies, right? There are billions and billions of galaxies that make up our universe. So to say that we are alone, I don't think so from my personal perspective, but we are trying to answer that question actually scientifically, right? We're trying to answer that question by using technologies like our telescope, right? The Hubble Space Telescope that is operational now, and the James Webb Space Telescope that we just launched is going to allow us to see back in our history, the history of the universe, when the Big Bang first happened. It's going to allow us to see the first light in our universe, the first star and the first galaxy that was formed. And so through those inquiries, right, through those experiments, through that observation, we are going to try to understand if we are alone, or if there are other intelligent life forms in our universe. The next thing is that, we have a lot of probes, a lot of spacecraft we've sent to Mars. Why is that? Why are we interested in Mars? Well, we're interested in Mars because Mars is very much similar to Earth in its past history. It actually had atmosphere, and we know there was a presence of water on Mars. And when there's water, when there's a presence of water, and the atmospheric conditions are right, I would say, then there is potential for life to be present. And we're not talking about human life as we know it. We're talking about it could be microbes, bacterial life, or it could be the smallest form of life. And so we just launched a couple years ago the Mars Perseverance rover on Mars, and its job is to collect Mars soil. We don't call it soil, we call it regolith, Mars regolith, and bring that back to Earth. And what we want to do is examine it for signs of life, right? For signs of maybe microbial life or something. So are we alone? I don't think so. But that is one of the top questions we want to answer as a science and engineering community. What measures are being taken to prevent global warming? If this is not preventing, would we leave the Earth, or will people have to learn to live on water just like in Venice? That's an interesting question. What measures are we taking to prevent global warming? I will tell you from a NASA perspective, our job is to develop technologies, space technologies like satellites that we launch into space and orbit the Earth, that study our climate here on Earth, right? So that is our job. Our job is to develop technologies to collect data about our climate, about the weather patterns on our Earth, about global warming. And it really was NASA scientists who first produce the evidence, the data that our planet was warming, right? And so that is our job, to develop the technology, collect the data, and then the science community, right, takes that data and they analyze it, and then they come up with different theories, of course, global warming, climate change, that from that perspective. And so that is our job. So it's not our job to solve global warming. It's we leave that to the heads of countries and politicians and policymakers to decide what we do about global warming. But our job at NASA is actually to collect the data and help scientists analyze that data, so that that data is then provided to decision makers, and then they decide what they do about that. The last question I will answer, let me see, I've lost my, sorry about that. I'm looking for the questions. Oh, okay. Right, and so what I just talked about, climate change and global warming, relates to the question Dildora asks, which is NASA currently has a number of programs to study climate change, freshwater resources, the evolution of the sun, and the life of other planets. Will there be climate change on the planet and space? Is it possible to determine the causes of climate change on the Earth through the universe? I would say that I think Mars is a perfect example of climate change, right? Mars used to have an atmosphere billions of years ago, I believe, and now they don't have an atmosphere. And so that is an example of the evolution of how their climate changed, right? And is it possible to determine causes of climate change on Earth through the universe? Yes, partly. We know that the other planets, we are in a system of other planets plus our moon, right? And in fact, we are going back to the moon, not just from a human exploration perspective, but actually there's a lot that our moon can teach us about the origins of our Earth, right? And the rest of our solar system. And so we are really interested in studying from a scientific perspective our moon and the origins of the moon. And there are a lot of craters on the moon because there have been a lot of, we call bombardments. They've been bombarded by meteors and asteroids. And so that can tell us there's a history from studying the moon. We can actually learn about the history of our solar system and of our Earth. And so that's one of the primary reasons we are going back to the moon, really, for long-term scientific exploration. And so that's the last question. And it's been delightful sharing a little bit of my knowledge with you about space and about my journey. And I look forward to possibly meeting you in person sometime soon. Thank you.